The Prestige from 2006, obviously starring Christian Bale, Hugh Jackman, Scarlett Johansson, Rebecca Hall. Quick logline: after a tragic incident, two stage magicians in 1890s London engage in a battle to create the ultimate illusion while sacrificing everything. They have to outwit each other. So I think this movie, I remember when I first watched it, I remember being sort of blown away by once again the non-linear narrative of it all. It's
Hmm.
all there. It was so fun to go back and rewatch this after years and years, but I remember kind of really being struck by that oh, this movie is so bizarre and strange in its kind of storytelling. Obviously it's made at when these two guys, Hugh Jackman and Christian Bale, are kind of upcoming hot new stars, and they're amazing in this movie. I'll talk about when they're not amazing as well, but they look amazing, and they have just so much like star power and charisma and everything around them. And then I think the world building aspect of this as well is what struck me when I first watched it, that this is a world that I know very little about. And of course, there are many movies made in this period, but to kind of focus it on the life of magicians and the intrigue and the illusion and the pretense and the sense of kind of competition and heartbreak and jealousy, all of those things are kind of peppered in, but it's all behind this kind of facade of magic, which is kind of fun and dorky in so many ways. And so that's what I remember enjoying about this, because it just felt so new and fresh right off the bat. I felt like I'd never seen something like this, even though it felt like a kind of a classical style period drama movie, but it had, high craft and so a laser focused eye on what are we dealing with in terms of the plot and the story and the setting, because
Hmm.
there's so you could go so broad, right? But this is very laser focused just on these, four or five key people. On the rewatch, though, of course, I was like, yeah, the time shifting and all of that makes sense. And I was like, oh,
Hmm.
yeah, this started way back. The crafts are amazing. They're all at play. But at the same time, I was like, this is very dorky. And I kind of was not to kind of look down on Nolan, but I sort of laughed a little bit throughout this movie that, oh, this is about magic. I mean, and people are spending way too much time being serious about this, and I think it's a very serious movie. Like, this is not Nolan winking that, oh,
Mm-mm.
look, this is kind of silly. No, he takes it very seriously. And then I started to think about, oh, is he equating movie making with magic in a way that, this is all about him and other people that maybe he's competing with as directors or storytellers trying to put their best foot forward, and once again those themes of guilt and such, like you said up
Hmm.
front, they're at play. But it definitely feels like an upcoming director or a younger director's movie,
Yes.
where maybe things are a little bit too self-serious, but it ends up being a little bit dorky. But even though it's fun and it's very well made, the performances are kind of all over the map. Hugh Jackman is not good in this movie. He hams
Oh,
his way through.
see,
Christian Bale is very good. Once again, the women, we've not really found a role yet for a woman, perhaps in a Nolan movie. There's some exceptions, I would say, but I don't know what they're up to just on the side. So it's an interesting, I don't know, peek into somebody's career and mind and head who's sort of upcoming and figuring things out. And it's pretty fun and fascinating to kind of then plot that Nolan to the Nolan we know now, because all
hmm
those themes are very much kind of being worked on, in that time. In some ways, Oppenheimer and Prestige are not that dissimilar in terms of, what's on their mind. Like, they're very serious movies about, a person trying to kind of create something, unravel something, and the consequences of that, whether it's guilt, jealousy, what have you. But I mean, we just spent so much time talking about Oppenheimer. Like,
right.
Prestige is not at that level, but it's a great entry point into that. So yeah, it's fun to see how the dork turned into a genius, is what I have to say.
Yeah. I had seen this movie right when it came out. I mean, at this point, after my first levels, we get into a second, every single one of his movies were opening weekends for me. And this coming right after Batman Begins, which like I said, was a life-changing experience for me and did move me to tears at the end of that film, just in terms of Batman finally being on screen. I was
Oh
definitely
wow.
disappointed in this film, and I know this, a lot of people hold this up as some great work. I think it's one of his minor works for sure. I think a lot of things you pointed out of seeing this film be a director still working on his craft and honing his craft. I mean, he was still young in his career at this point, and you can kind of see that a little bit. But there's a lot of brilliance in this movie too. I mean, similar to Oppenheimer, that starts with that sound of the feet stomping. You don't really know what it's going to be until later, and the feelings of guilt. This movie starts basically with the reveal of the trick, where you see the hats on the ground, which
Yeah.
is the plot twist. There is a plot twist in this movie at the end, and the hats kind of give that away, but you don't know what it is when you see it. And it fits in with the narrative structure of a magic trick, where Michael Caine's talking about, oh, there's this part when, like, you set up your initial concept, and then there's like a misdirection, and then the prestige is the final reveal of like what the
Right.
actual trick was. And that's how the movie is structured too. It's putting everything in the first 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Everything you need to solve the plot is right there, but you don't know it. Just like in a magic trick, you're there and you see the
Right.
magician doing this stuff, and everything is there. There's no, I mean, magic isn't quote unquote real. It's not like a real thing. So everything you can do to solve the trick is in front of you, but the magician is so skilled that he or she is able to misdirect you. And the movie does that too. And I just love how the narrative structure of this film fits with the theme of the film. But the one thing that also, like when I first saw it, didn't really land with me, and now that I've seen it, maybe half a dozen times since, it fits a little, like I can kind of stomach it more. Is the whole movie is this period piece about these magicians, and then the twist turns into a sci-fi movie at the end, which
Mhm.
really for me, the first time I saw this, it was kind of didn't work for me. It was too, the genres didn't mesh in my mind. It's like either there's a real world where real magic isn't real and it's all tricks, or there's a world where magic is real and this is just an alternate reality, and that's where the movie kind of gets to. And I think I had difficulty with that, honestly, when I first saw it, that there was that sci-fi twist in the film. But now I know it's coming, and it's fine. And I think Bale and Hugh Jackman, for what the movie's asking them to do a great job. I mean, Hugh Jackman should be sort of this pompous, over the top guy who's just driven to always trying to be like this showman, right? And that's why he comes across a little bit as trying very hard in this part. But I think that's part of the character, less of he's just not there as an actor. I find this actually to be a really good performance of his, and I think him and Bale work really well together as like counterweights in this war of two magicians, battling it out to see who's the best, the best of the best, basically. But on this rewatch too, I still think this is more of a minor work of his, but he's never made a bad film. So, in my
No.
opinion, so this is
Yeah.
still something I would recommend if listeners haven't seen this movie before. I know a lot of people think it's like a hidden gem of Nolan, or it's one of his favorite or their favorite films of his. So I definitely would check that out for sure.
I agree. It's pretty fun. And yeah, more so I was thinking about the performance comment you made. I mean, yeah, there's a hamminess to Hugh Jackman for sure, but I think the real, I guess, folly of the movie is in the writing.
Mm,
And that's the thing that I've always struggled with Nolan, like I mentioned, until Oppenheimer, pretty
hmm
much. I mean, of course, it gets only better and better as time goes by, but the stakes are not super clear. And that's when the acting kind of feels, school play a
mm.
little bit. Because when the stakes are not deep enough, then it's like, I am going to avenge and I am going to do everything. Then it becomes that because that's what the writing is. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think it is interesting too, looking back on this film, about, like you were mentioning before, sort of, is this Nolan's comment on filmmaking too? Like
Yeah.
this film asks a lot of questions about what you would sacrifice for art.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
Bale's character sacrifices certain things but draws a line at something else. And Hugh Jackman literally gives his life for
Hmm.
entertainment. Not that he dies in the end of the film per se, but he's basically giving everything he has to not only one-upping this other magician, but also just trying to one-up himself. Like he wants to be the best and have the ultimate magic trick. And what is he willing to sacrifice for that? And I think that's an interesting comment just on art, and as an artist, like how much of yourself do you give? All of it? Or is there some line you're going to draw at some point? I do think the movie raises those interesting questions too, which
I
is, I think it
totally
works on
agree.
that level. So I like how you called that out too.
Yeah. It's just that it's magic, which I think maybe I just have a hard time
Movies are
stopping
magic.
that.
You don't think
Oh,
movies are magic?
that's true. That is
It's all an illusion, but it makes you feel that it's
true.
real. Hi there, it's Alex. If you like the review and discussion Karan and I just had, make sure you subscribe to our channel, Movies That Shaped Us, to get full episodes. Every other Wednesday, Karan and I review a new release and then discuss 6 other movies made by that film's actor or director and how they shaped us. Subscribe right now or follow our podcast on Spotify or Apple Podcasts via the link in the description below. Hope you join us for the journey.